Okay, so today I wanted to take a look at a recent meta-analysis that I saw on X or the Twitter or whatever you want to call it by way of Steve Stewart Williams. It was a post on a study or network meta-analysis by the British Medical Journal, and sort of the clickbaity headline was that exercise had a greater impact on depression scores than did SSRIs. So that's the clickbaity headline. So we're going to get into this episode and we're going to talk about sort of my thoughts on what that means, what can we infer and take from that, and sort of how do we move forward, knowing some of the things that we know based on this study. I will say this is not medical advice. This isn't mental health advice. Please, if you're in crisis, 988, talk to a therapy provider who preferably you can see in person, or someone you get through BetterHelp or something like that. Filter all your questions as far as mental health goes by way of those providers. And then additionally, if you are currently seeing a mental health provider who prescribes you an SSRI or anything like that, again, this is just my opinion and what I've seen with the people that I've worked with and doesn't necessarily map onto your case. Let's get to the episode. Just for review, this was a systematic review and network meta-analysis of many, many studies. Now, these many, many studies were combined. Studies that didn't meet certain criteria were sort of left out and eliminated. And what we have left is a large group of studies that looked at the impact of exercise on depression. So what exactly did they find? And here are 3 interesting findings that I took from it that I think are really impactful and can sort of guide decision-making in terms of what we want to do with our exercise and our mental health. So what are some of the things that they found? The number 1 finding that I think is really, really cool is that they found a dose-response relationship between the intensity of exercise and its impact on depression scores. Why is this cool? Well, for any number of reasons. I think, in terms of bodybuilding and strength training and things like that, I think you think of gradually increasing intensities. And so in my mind, if the intensity of exercise can greatly impact my mood, and that is a variable that I can control, holy crap, that is really cool to me. And so I think that not just exercising, but looking at how intensely and intently we are exercising, if that can have an impact on our mood, my goodness, why not control that variable? Because in therapy and in life and in strength training and hypertrophy training, you want to put your focus in the variables that you can control, and anything that you can't control, you want to sort of put that aside. So looking at the things that are in our control, intensity being one of those things, I think is important to know and can help guide sort of our training. Another finding that I thought was cool was that there was no association between how depressed a person was and how effective exercise could be to improve their mood. So if you think about different levels of severity in terms of depression, like mild, moderate, and severe depression, all of those levels of depression can benefit. Now, are they going to benefit to the same degree? Possibly, probably not. But exercise still had some effect on those levels of depression. And I think that's important to know because, again, if we can begin to exercise, we can have a drastic impact on our moods regardless of how severe the depression is. Here's the last big sort of tentative conclusion that they sort of highlighted at the end of the study, and it's that exercise appeared more effective than antidepressants on its impact on depression scores. However, they also included that when combined, exercise, strength training, yoga, what have you, when combined with an SSRI, had a greater effect and the effect of the drug improved. So those were some interesting findings that sort of triggered in me why I wanted to sort of do this video. But let's take a look at antidepressants, then let's take a look at exercise, and then let's take a look at what else I'm thinking about this. Why antidepressants at all? For me, the number 1 thing is that getting started, getting over the hump might be the hardest thing. Whenever I worked as a personal trainer, I think one of the hardest things for clients was just getting started. Now, they were already in the gym to see me, and I was already training them, so there's one sort of hurdle. But another hurdle might have been changing your diet. That might be sort of getting started in that arena might be your hardest thing. Now, flash forward to today when I'm seeing patients in a clinic, the hardest thing might be, getting out of bed, that might be the hardest thing. And so when you're dealing with anything diagnostic or depression that is so debilitating that it keeps you in bed, and the hardest thing is just getting up in the morning, what makes you think you're going to be able to set smart, specific goals around exercise whenever you can't get out of bed? There are levels of depression that are that debilitating. And so I think to help get you started, to help get you functioning in important areas of life, antidepressants might be a great way to go for some. Again, I underline for some. Additionally, if someone is looking to improve their mental health, they may also lack a sort of a self-efficacy for any forms of exercise. I think we take for granted in certain communities that it might be easy to exercise for us, or it might be so ingrained in us to strength train or things like that everybody can do it. However, it's not that easy for everybody. Not everybody has learned to train their body. So another thing, sort of a limiting factor, is self-efficacy. If you don't know a particular way to train or to take care of your body, that might just be a no-go for you. And seeing a medication provider to begin addressing some of these symptoms so that you can begin maybe learning about various forms of exercise, that might be the route to go. Another thing to consider when thinking about an SSRI or an antidepressant, your work-life balance. For some people that I know, work-life balance isn't a thing. I mean, they could work 10, 12, 14, 16 hours in a day, so their work life is just not amenable to adding in a decent amount of exercise throughout the week. Now, you could argue that maybe they could fit in at lunch, maybe if it was important enough to them. That's something I often hear. If it's important enough to you, you'll make time for it. And I technically agree with that statement. However, I think we discount how hard it is, one, to get going, and two, whenever our schedule feels so full that adding in any sort of major change, which beginning to strength train or yoga or whatever, a couple times a week, 3 times a week, even 1 time a week, isn't going to fit in some people's schedules. You look at all the hours that people work, and going the route at first of an SSRI, and then eventually incorporating in things like therapy and exercise, that might be a more feasible route for people to begin making change. And I think from a sort of a clinical perspective, that's all I'm there for. I want to see people make the change towards the goals and values that they can set for themselves. And for some, if the first thing that you can change is seeing your medication provider and getting a little bit of help to boost your mood and get you going, then hey, that's the route that some people go, and I'm not going to knock it. Back to that severity thing. So, like I said before, mild, moderate, severe forms of depression. And for some, we have that label, sort of depression, but underneath it all, what does it mean? Well, some things that are involved with depression, low mood, anhedonia, or not enjoying things that you used to enjoy. But along with that, there's another layer of how are you functioning in important areas of life? How are you functioning at work? How are you functioning at home? How are you functioning at school? How are you functioning in your church, synagogue, mosque, whatever? If you are not functioning in these areas, the perceived impact of depression can seem greater. And I think whenever we look at functioning, I think that's one of sort of the hallmark signs that depression is having an impact on our lives. So if we can sort of interject with an SSRI and people can begin engaging more in their relationships, can be more active and participatory at work, can begin doing and functioning in particular roles that they take in their lives, when they can improve that functioning, I mean, that is another case for SSRIs if that is the route they choose to go. Again, here, one of the many values that I hold, sort of as a clinician, is sort of my patient's autonomy, their ability to choose. And if some people choose to go the route of an SSRI first so that they can begin functioning, which is an important aspect of depression, then hey, more power to them. And it is a route, and it's a credible route. Why exercise? Well, I think if you're watching this channel at all, I think you already enjoy, bodybuilding, hypertrophy, strength training, and you already know why. You know the way it makes you feel, you know the way it changes your body, you know the way it increases your muscle mass, and if you pair that with a calorie deficit, the lower body fat, you get greater self-confidence on top of sort of the great physiologic and metabolic responses that you get from weight training. Additionally, like these secondary characteristics of increased muscle mass and lower body fat, that may lead to greater confidence, not just in the area of strength and conditioning, but in other areas of life. So when you look at sort of why exercise, why would one want to begin hypertrophy training? Yes, it can have a drastic improvement on your mood if you continuously do it for a specified amount of time consistently, and you continue to do that. There are also pain management studies that show that exercise has a great impact on our perception of pain and our ability to get through life with a certain amount of pain. So if exercise, strength training, yoga, what have you, can improve our ability to cope and interact with the types of pain we have, my goodness, why not do that? I don't know that in that realm that SSRIs can have a great impact on our perception of pain. So it's really, there are multiple whammies of sort of strength training and exercise. And if we can improve our body composition, improve our confidence, improve certain physiologic and metabolic markers of health, it's just, they're all good things here. And when you pair with that, bodybuilding style training is also very low injury, then I think you have a safe and effective way to improve almost all aspects of your life. There is another thing that whenever I'm thinking about exercise and engaging in exercise is you begin to become more efficacious in an important life skill. And that life skill is taking care of your body. I don't think we, in the sort of bodybuilding world, think about exercise as a way to enhance our longevity, or that's not the first thing that we think of, but it absolutely is. If you exercise in a bodybuilding style fashion, you can add to your sort of longevity, and more so than that, I think your quality of life, because age-related muscle loss as we get into our 60s, 70s, and 80s is one of the things that can help determine your life satisfaction and overall, end-of-life trajectory. So we develop a skill, we become efficacious in a skill that is going to take care of us in the long term. Then we can pass that skill down to our children and our grandchildren. Last thing I'll say about exercise is when you become sort of, I don't want to say obsessed, I'm going to say obsessed. When you become obsessed with a certain form of exercise, whether that be something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, dance, walking, aerobics, whatever, bodybuilding, you possibly open yourself up to a community for which you can engage in. And when we are now in a time when we are probably the loneliest we've ever been, probably the most disconnected, even though that we can connect on things like this, when we connect on phones, I don't know that that's real connection. Whenever we are this lonely, opening yourself up, giving yourself the opportunity to engage with new people, with new ideas, that is one of the wonderful side effects of getting out and exercising. And I think that's one of the benefits I've seen in my life. I have made a lot of powerful connections with people who I encountered while exercising. And I say powerful in that the power is just in the interaction. I get to learn about their interests, they get to learn about mine. Whenever we have shared interests, we get to laugh and do things like that. So exercising opens you up to a community of people who like what you like, which is so powerful for our mental health. And from a sort of biopsychosocial perspective, it's one of the areas that I try to tackle whenever I am working with somebody. And so when you can tackle sort of the physiological, biological side and the social aspect by sort of going to a gym or going to a studio or anything like that, it's all the better. It's win, 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 win. Is that Michael Scott? I don't know. My last sort of thing here is why it's yes and. Why is it not just SSRIs? Why is it not just exercise? Why is it yes and? This is for you and your provider to decide. I am not your provider. So you and your provider decide what you're going to be on, how you're going to modify your dosage, how long you're going to be on that dosage, and whether or not you need to continue taking a particular medication. This is important to know because once you get on SRIs, it doesn't have to be a forever thing. Some people take it more long-term. Some people take it to sort of get over a hump that they have in their life. And so whenever you're interacting with your medication provider, you can modulate how much you're taking in, when you start, when you stop, as long as you have good communication with them. And this could be just a stepping stone. So in terms of why it's exercise and it's SSRIs, well, the number one thing is you can modulate how much and how long you take any particular SSRI as long as you're in good communication with your provider. So it's not a forever thing. back to the study by the British Medical Journal, whenever they did take a look at all these things that had all these sort of activities and SSRIs that had an impact on depression scores, the combination of exercise and antidepressants had a greater effect than either alone. So in this case, it's most definitely not either or, it's yes and. If you want to make drastic changes in your life, if you want to see your mood improve, if you want to see your anxiety improve, that's speculation on my part, although I believe there is research out there to show that, some amount of exercise will help with anxiety. If you want to see drastic improvement and you're ready to make multiple changes, you can see your provider and you can begin exercising in the same week. It's win-win here, and it shows in this meta-analysis a greater impact on overall depression scores when you combine the two. So that's probably the main reason for why it's yes and not either or. But if you're struggling, there's a way forward. There are multiple ways forward. And one thing that I haven't really touched on here is also the effect of therapy. Like cognitive behavioral therapy was, I believe, ranked even higher than the combination of exercise and SSRIs. So when you think about it that way, it's sort of like it's a triple threat, really. If you begin therapy, if you see your medication provider and you begin taking an SSRI and you begin exercising, holy crap! I don't know that even in this study they showed the effect of sort of the combination of all three. I would speculate that if you have the time and the energy to begin doing multiple of these things, you would have a great impact on your overall mood, depression or otherwise. So what do you do from here? Well, if you're experiencing any kind of mental health related thing, get your ass to a provider. Get your butt to a therapist. Ignore the whole cognitive behavioral part here. I think CBT is great and fantastic, but I also think literature supports the fact that the most impactful thing, the thing that produces the best outcomes, is how well do you get along with your therapist? Give it a few weeks, give it a few months, give it half a dozen to a dozen sessions. If things are going well, continue. If things aren't going well, talk about referrals. Like, it is your right that if things aren't working for you to seek help elsewhere. So be empowered. Know that there are people out there who want to help you. Part of the reason I'm doing this YouTube thing is I want to help and connect with people in sort of a non-clinical setting, but there are clinicians and therapists out there who just want to help, and some of them are very heavily CBT, some are not, some are humanistic, some are third wave, sort of like me, that I like the sort of acceptance and commitment therapy and things like that. Just find someone you gel with, and that is going to have a great impact. Number two, if the hardest thing for you is getting over the hump, and you don't have time in your schedule, your work-life balance is off, you just need something to keep you going, go talk to a psychiatrist, a medication provider, and take a look at your options. You don't have to start anything, but I think knowing where to go, you have to be willing to talk about it in some form or fashion. So go do that. Lastly, start lifting some heavy ass weight. Pause, relatively heavy ass weight, because bodybuilding style training, while very fun and awesome and offers you more of sort of those secondary characteristics, the increased muscle mass, pair it with a deficit, decreased body fat, an awesome look, can also be very, very fun. The next thing you're going to want to do is check out this next episode, and I'll see you all over there.